You'd think that a piano that dates back 100 years or more would have some natural antique value. You hear about this. Not so much with pianos. Condition is everything with pianos. How much does it cost to restore a piano? Well, this is a wide open topic with a very wide range. If I had to one-line it at the beginning for you, I'd say the average is around $15,000 to rebuild a piano. Now, I say that that's just an average because there's a tremendous range depending upon a number of factors. There are essentially three components to a piano. You've got the belly of the piano, which is comprised of the soundboard, the pin block, the strings, the plate, and all of that. That's one component of a piano. You've got also the furniture of a piano. Just refinishing a piano costs thousands of dollars because it has to be disassembled and sprayed and rubbed out. If it's a satin finish or a high gloss, has to be a very clean room with no dust and all of that. And then you've got the action with its somewhere around 10,000 parts. Now, there are some rebuilders that get between $30,000 to $40,000 to restore a piano. Obviously, you don't do this with a cheap Asian production piano, but pianos like Mason and Hamlin, Steinway, or some fine European pianos like Brusendorfer or Bechstein, since those new can cost $80,000 or more, it's certainly well worth considering spending that kind of money to restore them. Now, where did I get this $15,000 figure? Well, the soundboard of the piano, just that one component, oftentimes soundboards can be repaired to function on a very high level, but when they have to be replaced, just a soundboard replacement can cost $8,000 to $10,000. So that one component can be a game changer in the cost of restoring a piano. There are also, of course, different levels of restoration, as well as the quality of restoration. So hopefully, if you have a piano that needs restoration, it doesn't need absolutely everything. It's possible, for example, the finish is okay, but maybe the strings are rusted out from being near the beach. Or maybe the action's worn out from a lot of play, but the rest of the piano is okay. This is why there's a very wide range, as well as the quality of parts that you're using and the quality of manufacturing in the first place warrants different levels of work that you might consider doing to a piano. What is the most important part of a piano? Well, I'm here inside this Steinway to show you two fundamental parts of a piano, and by the end of this, you will know what the single most important part of a piano is. Well, naturally, this cast iron frame, the plate of the piano, is structurally necessary to be able to have a piano at all. Can plates crack? Well, the answer is yes, they can. It's quite rare in most pianos, but there are certain models and designs of pianos that have thinner parts that are prone to cracking. So those are to be avoided. Any cracks in plates are a definite deal breaker. Just like if you were buying a house, you would avoid a house that has a cracked foundation. Same principle here. The plate is responsible for holding several tons of string tension, and if there's cracks, you could try welding, but the results might not be permanent. Now, what's the other part that's fundamental? The soundboard. The soundboard is so important in a piano that, did you know that in Europe, if you replace the soundboard on a piano, you are legally prevented from putting the original manufacturer's name on the front of the piano? Because for all purposes, what makes a Steinway is that soundboard, or any other piano for that matter. To determine if your soundboard is in good shape, or for any piano you look at, the secret is climbing underneath and looking up. Have a flashlight with you and a business card. The real deal breaker is not necessarily cracks. In fact, hairline cracks in soundboards are a normal part of the aging process in most parts of the country. The real issue is that the soundboard becomes warped and, worse yet, detached from the ribs. That's why you want the business card. Kind of go along the seam of the ribs and see if there's any space anywhere. If there is, this could be a problem. And the reason why it's such an important problem is that the only way to properly fix it is to remove the cast iron plate of the piano and rebuild it, because it has to be shimmed, glued, and refinished to have structural integrity. What are antique pianos worth? So many times people call up and they say, hey, I've got this old piano. It seems to have a harp inside. It's got ivory. This thing's got to be worth a lot. And the first question you ask isn't what's the brand or the size or the finish. No, it's what is the condition? Condition is everything with pianos. You'd think that a piano that dates back 100 years or more would have some natural antique value. You hear about this. You watch Antique Roadshow and other shows out there and they find these little treasures and go, oh my gosh, it's worth so much. Not so much with pianos. Now, there are some exceptions. What are they? Let's get the exceptions out of the way first. If, for example, you had one of the very first Steinway pianos ever made, or maybe even another manufacturer, one that's truly historical in its significance. For example, if maybe Chickering only made half a dozen of a certain model and you had one of the last remaining ones made in the 1860s, there could be some antique value. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'd say maybe one out of 10,000 pianos might fit into that criteria. It's a rare thing to have true antique value. Another example might be a piano that was played by a famous person. That's a whole other area. And as a matter of fact, for appraisals, you have to find the right appraiser who can take that into account, because it's really hard to assess value based upon its lineage. So, other than that, what other things are there to look for? Well, I mentioned condition. There are certain brands that are going to have more stature than others. Naturally, Steinway is the most well-known brand of any piano, so older Steinways can retain value even when they need rebuilding. There's a market for them because used Steinways can command much more money than other pianos just because everybody knows the name. But still, condition is so important because the cost of rebuilding a piano, if you had a piano like this, for example, that had been neglected, maybe it had been in a beach home and got rusted out, played a lot, worn out, you could easily spend $20,000, $30,000 restoring it. So you got to ask, well, what's the piano worth after restoration? And if the answer is less than the work you're going to put into it, you've got a negative net worth, which obviously is no value. So that's the long and short of it. There really isn't antique value in pianos generally, with the exceptions I articulated at the beginning of something truly rare, something that's only a handful were ever made from a respected manufacturer. Otherwise, sadly, there's a lot of old pianos out there that go begging, and we do our best here at Living Pianos to provide a new life for some of the magnificent instruments from years past. Thanks for joining me. Again, Robert Estrin here at livingpianos.com, your online piano store.